The thing about starting a criminal enterprise in New Taipei Station was that everyone thought you needed connections, muscle, or at least a trust fund. But what you really needed was audacity and a spreadsheet. Tommy Rodriguez stood in the rain-slicked alley behind Club Synthesis, watching his life savings walk through the door in the form of 6 stolen plasma rifles and one very nervous Gribbian smuggler. The amphibious alien's throat sac pulsated with anxiety as Tommy counted out the compressed credit chips, each one representing a week of courier runs through the radiation zones that still glowed from the '87 conflict. "This concludes our business," the Gribbian's translator box crackled. He scooped up the credits with webbed fingers and disappeared into the neon haze. Tommy hefted one of the rifles, checking the charge pack. 23 years old and holding enough firepower to vaporize a shuttle. His reflection stared back from a puddle, rain distorting his face into something almost unrecognizable. 6 months ago, he'd been another warehouse drone, scanning packages for Megacorp shipping lanes. Then the layoffs came, automated systems replacing human hands, and Tommy learned what every young man in the lower levels eventually discovered. Legitimate work paid subsistence, but the black market paid rent. His calm piece buzzed. "Got eyes on you, boss. 3 civvies at the north entrance, 2 at south. We're clear." "Copy that, Alex." Tommy triggered his optical implant, overlaying thermal signatures across his vision. Alex Kowalski crouched on the fire escape 2 stories up, her rifle scope tracking pedestrian traffic. 4 weeks ago, she'd been slinging drinks at a dive bar, getting groped by off-world miners. Tommy offered her 500 credits a week in respect. She took both. The third member of their crew emerged from the shadows, a towering human-Ursinian hybrid named Victor Zhao. 8 feet of augmented muscle and bare genetics, Victor had done time on 3 stations for assault. He'd also managed his family's restaurant for 6 years before the protection rackets bled them dry. "We doing this?" Victor's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Tommy nodded. "We're doing this." Club Synthesis sat in the heart of the Meridian District, a 3-story pleasure palace that catered to off-world traders and corporate middle management. The owner, a greasy human named Preston Lowe, ran protection money to the Jade Dragons, one of the 5 major gangs controlling New Taipei's underworld. The Dragons were old guard, bloated with territory and lazy with enforcement. Tommy had studied them for months. He knew their roots, their payment collections, their weak points. The Dragons took 30% of Synthesis's monthly gross, approximately 18,000 credits. They provided nothing except the absence of violence. It was extraction, not protection. He ran the numbers in his head again. If they took Synthesis, they'd need to offer Lowe a better deal, something that made economic sense. 20% cut instead of 30, but with actual services. Security, weapons, a supply line for the gray market liquor that doubled profit margins. More importantly, they needed to make it clear that defying them would cost more than compliance. This was business, bloody, brutal business, but business nonetheless. They entered through the back entrance, moving past stacked liquor crates and the sharp smell of chemical cleaners. The bass from the main floor thrummed through the walls. Tommy's heart hammered in his chest, but his hands stayed steady. Fear was acceptable. Hesitation wasn't. Preston Lowe sat in his office counting receipts, his augmented eyes glowing faint blue in the dim light. He looked up as Tommy entered, first confused, then annoyed. "We're closed for private inventory. Get lost." Tommy placed one of the plasma rifles on the desk. "We need to talk about your overhead costs." Lowe's expression shifted from annoyance to calculation. His eyes flicked to the rifle, to Tommy, to the doorway where Victor's massive frame blocked the exit. "I pay my dues. Take it up with the Dragons." "The Dragons charge too much." Tommy pulled up a holographic display from his wrist comp, projecting numbers into the air between them. 30% for nothing. I'm offering 20% for actual services. Security, supply lines, problem solving. You save 10% monthly, I guarantee no other crews bother you, and you get access to suppliers who will cut your costs another 15% on imported liquor. "And if I say no?" Lowe leaned back in his chair, trying to project confidence. Tommy picked up the plasma rifle. "Then you're making a bad business decision." The implications hung in the air. Lowe was a survivor, not a fighter. He'd run Synthesis for 8 years by reading situations and adapting. His fingers drummed on the desk, cyborg components clicking softly. "Who are you with?" "Nobody yet. We're starting fresh. That's the opportunity here. You get in early, you get better terms than you'd ever see from established crews. Or I get dead when the Dragons find out." The dragons are scattered across 40 properties. They can't monitor everything. By the time they notice, we'll have enough territory that coming after us costs more than writing it off. Tommy let the rifle rest against his shoulder. This is happening, Preston. The only question is whether you're smart enough to profit from it. Lowe studied the numbers floating in the air. Tommy watched him do the math, weighing risk against reward. Finally, the club owner sighed. 20% weekly payments. You handle security, and if anyone comes looking for trouble, you put them down fast. I don't need my club becoming a battlefield. Tommy extended his hand. You've got a deal. They shook, and Tommy's first revenue stream locked into place. According to Synthesis's books, they grossed approximately 60,000 credits monthly. 20% meant 12,000. Subtract Alex's salary at 2,000, Victor's at 2,000, equipment costs, bribes, and operational expenses, and they'd clear maybe 5,000 profit the first month. It wasn't much, but it was a foundation. Over the next 3 weeks, Tommy applied the same formula to 2 more establishments. Club Meridian, a gambling hall, came relatively easy. The owner, an elderly Terran woman named Ruth Gibson, actually seemed relieved to switch to a crew that provided value. The third, a strip club called Velvet Dreams, required more persuasion. The owner, a Dracovian reptilian named Skreth, challenged Victor to a dominance fight. Victor won by slamming the 7-foot lizard through a reinforced table. 3 properties meant 35,000 monthly gross. Tommy reinvested the profits immediately, recruiting 4 more crew members and purchasing better weapons. His operations started to look legitimate, or at least professional. That's when the Jade Dragons noticed. The message came through an intermediary, a scarred human enforcer named Diego Ramirez. He found Tommy at a noodle stand in the lower markets, sliding onto the stool beside him without invitation. You're making noise in Meridian District. Ramirez stirred his bowl methodically. My bosses want to know who you are. Tommy continued eating, forcing his hands not to shake. Independent contractor just trying to make a living. Independent contractors don't take dragon properties. They weren't dragon properties. You were collecting taxes, not providing services. Ramirez smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You know how this ends, right? You're a kid playing gangster. We've got 300 soldiers, connections to the station council, and more firepower than you've ever seen. You fold now, we'll let you walk away. Maybe you lose a hand for the disrespect, but you live. Tommy met his eyes. What's option 2? Option 2 is we put you in a recycler and no one remembers your name. The threat was real. The Jade Dragons had operated on New Taipei Station for 30 years. They had infrastructure, political connections, and enough muscle to wage actual war. Tommy's crew was 9 people with stolen weapons and 3 properties. But Tommy had spent his life watching bigger organizations collapse under their own weight. Megacorps that couldn't adapt, governments that ignored their citizens, gangs that grew so large they forgot what made them dangerous in the first place. The Dragons were vulnerable precisely because they were established. Tell your bosses I'm open to negotiation. Tommy dropped credits on the counter for his meal. But I'm not folding. Ramirez laughed, a sharp bark of disbelief. You've got balls, kid. Stupid balls, but balls. You've got 3 days to reconsider. After that, we come in force. He left, and Tommy sat alone with his cooling noodles, running calculations in his head. 3 days wasn't enough time to recruit more soldiers or acquire better weapons. It was, however, enough time to change the equation entirely. Tommy gathered his crew in the basement of Club Synthesis, a converted storage room that now served as their headquarters. 9 faces looked back at him, ranging from Alex's cautious optimism to Victor's stoic readiness. They were young, hungry, and so far out of their depth that they didn't realize they should be terrified. The Dragons gave us 3 days to surrender. Tommy pulled up a station map on the wall display. We're not surrendering. We're also not winning a straight fight. Alex crossed her arms. They've got numbers, weapons, and experience. What's the play? We hit their money. Tommy highlighted 6 locations on the map. The Dragons run protection on 80 properties across New Taipei. They collect weekly from each location, consolidating the credits at their main counting house in Sector 7. Every Friday night, they move approximately 2 million credits to a secure vault in the station's commercial district. You want to rob them? Victor raised an eyebrow. I want to cripple them. The Dragons' power comes from their reputation and their cash flow. We cut the cash flow, we damage the reputation. Suddenly they're weak, and weak gangs lose territory. A newer recruit, a human tech specialist named Ian Montgomery, leaned forward. The counting house has military-grade security, biometric locks, combat drones, hardened servers. Even if we got in, we'd never crack the vault. We don't need to crack it. Tommy zoomed in on the route between the counting house and the commercial vault. We hit the transport, 4 guards, an armored hovercraft, a 20-minute route through the industrial sector. That's our window. The room fell silent. What Tommy proposed was tantamount to declaring war. Robbing a dragon collection meant burning bridges, inviting retaliation that would dwarf anything they'd faced so far. If we do this, we're committed. Alex's voice was steady. No backing down, no negotiating. We're all in. Tommy looked at each of them in turn. I'm not ordering anyone to stay. This is volunteer. But if we pull this off, we won't just survive. We'll expand. We'll become the crew that took down the Dragon's transport. Every small-time operation on this station will want to work with us instead of them. One by one, they nodded. Friday night arrived with artificial rain, the station's environmental systems mimicking Earth weather patterns. Tommy positioned his crew along the transport route, setting up overlapping fields of fire and electronic countermeasures. Ian had hacked into the station's traffic management system, ready to lock down intersections and reroute security responses. The armored hovercraft appeared exactly on time, its anti-grav engines humming through the industrial sector's empty streets. 4 guards rode inside, visible through reinforced windows. Tommy triggered his comm. Position set. Alex, you're up. 2 blocks ahead, Alex squeezed her rifle's trigger. The shot punched through the hovercraft's front repulsor array, sending the vehicle lurching sideways. It scraped against a building wall, showering sparks across the pavement. The guards poured out, weapons ready, scanning for threats. They found them. Victor opened fire from the roof, his heavy repeater tearing chunks from the pavement. 2 guards dove for cover while the others returned fire. Plasma bolts sizzled through the rain, turning moisture to steam. Tommy moved fast, flanking around through a side alley while the guards focused on Victor's position. His optical implant tracked heat signatures, calculating firing solutions. He emerged behind their cover, dropping 2 guards with precise shots before they could react. The remaining 2 guards tried to retreat into the hovercraft, but Alex's second shot disabled the engine completely. 1 guard raised his hands in surrender. The other tried to trigger an emergency beacon. Tommy shot the beacon out of his hand and yelled to them to get on the ground. They complied, and Tommy's crew swarmed the vehicle. Ian cracked the cargo compartment in under 2 minutes, revealing stacks of compressed credit chips. 2.3 million credits, slightly more than expected. Load it up. Tommy kept his rifle trained on the surrendered guards. You 2 are going to deliver a message to your bosses. Tell them Tommy Rodriguez is open to territorial negotiation. We keep Meridian District, they keep everything else, and nobody needs to bleed over it. 1 guard, his face pale with fear, nodded quickly. They'll kill us for losing this shipment. Probably. Tommy didn't sugarcoat it. But you'll die faster if you don't deliver the message. Your choice. They ran the moment Tommy lowered his weapon, disappearing into the maze of industrial corridors. Victor secured the last of the credits while Ian scrubbed the security footage. Station security will respond in approximately 4 minutes. Ian's fingers danced across his wrist comp. We need to move. They scattered according to plan, taking different routes back to safe houses. Tommy rode alone on a maintenance platform, the adrenaline slowly draining from his system. 2.3 million credits. Enough to arm a small army, bribe half the station council, or disappear to a colony world and live comfortably for decades. Instead, Tommy planned to invest it back into the operation. The Dragon's response came faster than expected. 3 days after the robbery, Tommy walked into Club Synthesis to find Preston Lowe beaten unconscious behind the bar. The walls were tagged with Dragon symbols, and a data chip sat on Tommy's makeshift desk. He played the message. A heavy-set human with gang tattoos covering his scalp filled the screen. You wanted negotiation. Here's my negotiation. You've got 24 hours to return our money, surrender your crew, and volunteer for public execution in the lower markets. Do that and we only kill you. Refuse and we burn every property you've touched. We kill everyone who works for you. We make an example that lasts a generation. The speaker leaned closer to the camera. You don't start wars with the Dragons, boy. You don't have the weight. Tommy deleted the message and immediately called his crew together. 9 faces, now hardened by their first real combat. They'd crossed a line and everyone knew there was no going back. They want total surrender. Tommy didn't soften it. And they'll follow through on the threats. We've got 24 hours before they come at us with everything they've got. So what do we do? Alex checked her rifle's charge pack. We can't fight 300 soldiers. We don't fight 300, we fight their leadership. Tommy pulled up intelligence files Ian had compiled. The Dragons operate on a command structure. 5 captains, each controlling a different district. Take out the captains, the organization fractures. That's 5 simultaneous hits, Victor growled. We don't have the personnel. No, but we have money. Lots of it. Tommy started sending out encrypted messages. The Dragons aren't the only crew on this station. They've got enemies, rivals, people they've pushed around for years. We're going to buy some allies. Over the next 18 hours, Tommy spent lavishly. He hired the Crimson Talons, a pirate crew with a grudge against the Dragons, to hit their northern district captain. He bribed the station's security captain with enough credits to look the other way during a 4-hour window. He purchased information from a network of informants, learning the Dragons' response patterns and safe house locations. Most importantly, he hired 15 additional guns, mercenaries and freelancers who worked for credits rather than loyalty. The attacks happened at dawn, station time. 5 Dragon captains, targeted in their homes, offices, and favorite establishments. Tommy personally led the hit on the Southern District captain, a vicious woman named Claire Voss who'd built her reputation on creative brutality. They breached her apartment with shaped charges, blowing the reinforced door off its hinges. Voss was ready, wearing light combat armor and wielding a plasma shotgun. She took down one of Tommy's hired guns before Alex put a round through her shoulder. Voss collapsed, cursing, her weapon clattering across the floor. Tommy stood over her, rifle aimed at her head. Your organization is finished. He kept his voice level. 5 captains down, your money gone, and half your soldiers looking for the exits. You've got one chance to survive this. Call off your people, announce the Dragons are surrendering Meridian District, and walk away. Voss laughed through the pain. You think killing us changes anything? The Dragons have been here for 30 years. We've got connections, infrastructure. You're just another punk who'll be dead by next month. Maybe, Tommy lowered his rifle, but you won't be alive to see it. By noon, the war was over. 3 Dragon captains dead, 2 surrendered. The organization didn't collapse entirely, but it fractured badly enough that holding territory became impossible. Smaller crews rushed to fill the vacuum, grabbing properties and protection contracts. Tommy's crew, now 30 strong, controlled Meridian District completely. 18 properties paid them protection, generating approximately 120,000 credits monthly. The money allowed for better weapons, better intelligence, and better recruitment. They'd survived their first war, but Tommy knew it wouldn't be their last. 3 months later, Tommy sat in what had become his office, a converted storage room with actual furniture now. Ruth Gibson from Club Meridian had connected him with suppliers on Colony Worlds, opening up import opportunities. Ian had developed software to manage their protection territories efficiently. Victor ran enforcement with professional precision, keeping violence minimal but effective. Alex entered without knocking, dropping into a chair across from his desk. Got 3 more properties requesting our services. 2 bars in the Eastern Quarter and a small spaceport warehouse. Crew capacity? We can handle it if we recruit another squad. I've got 5 potentials lined up for interviews. Tommy nodded, making notes on his data pad. The business had grown faster than he'd anticipated. Protection had evolved into actual security services. Their weapons dealing expanded to include legal contracts with station militia. They'd even started laundering money through legitimate businesses. Heard something interesting today. Alex leaned back. There's a new gang forming in the manufacturing district. Humans mostly, some aliens. They're calling themselves the Red Suns, and they're talking about unifying all the independent crews. Competition or opportunity? Depends. They might want to absorb us, they might want to fight us, or they might want to partner. Tommy considered the variables. 3 months ago, he'd been a warehouse drone with a bad idea and stolen weapons. Now he ran an organization that generated a high monthly revenue and controlled a significant territory. The Red Suns represented the next level of growth, expansion into intergang politics and station-wide influence. Set up a meeting. Tommy closed his data pad. Let's see what they're offering, Alex grinned. You thinking long-term? Tommy smiled. This is just the beginning. She left, and Tommy allowed himself a moment of reflection. His criminal enterprise had stabilized, generating predictable revenue through protection, weapon sales, and gray market imports. They'd established themselves as professionals rather than thugs, offering actual value to their clients while maintaining the threat of violence for noncompliance. The economics worked. More importantly, the model was scalable. Tommy pulled up a station-wide map, marking territories, competitors, and opportunities. Meridian District was secure, but the Eastern Quarter represented virgin territory. The manufacturing sector had potential for weapons dealing. The commercial district could support money laundering operations. Building a criminal empire required the same skills as building any business. Market analysis, resource allocation, competitive advantage, and long-term strategic planning. The only difference was that failure meant death rather than bankruptcy. Tommy minimized the map and started drafting operational protocols for the new recruits. There was always more work to do, more territory to take, more money to make. The Jade Dragons had learned that stagnation meant vulnerability. Tommy wouldn't make the same mistake. His comm piece buzzed with an encrypted message from Ian. Got interesting intel from our station security contact. Corporate fleet incoming, new regulations about organized crime. They're planning a crackdown, Tommy typed back quickly. Timeline, 6 months, maybe less. 6 months to expand, consolidate, and prepare for the next phase. The station's power structures were shifting, and Tommy's crew needed to shift with them or get crushed. It was the same pattern that had created his opportunity in the first place, the same cycle of destruction and rebirth that defined life in New Taipei Station's underworld. He stood, stretching muscles still sore from the Dragon War. Through the office window, he could see the neon sprawl of Meridian District, lights reflecting off rain-slicked streets. Somewhere out there, other young criminals were plotting their own rise, just as ambitious and desperate as Tommy had been 3 months ago. Some would succeed. Most would die. That was the nature of the business. Tommy checked his weapons, confirmed his crew positions, and headed out into the district. There were properties to visit, money to collect, and deals to negotiate. The work of building an empire never stopped, and Tommy Rodriguez was just getting started. The thing about starting a criminal enterprise, he'd learned, was that everyone thought you needed connections, muscle, or a trust fund. What you really needed was audacity, a spreadsheet, and the willingness to bet everything on a single calculated play. Tommy had made his bet. Now he just had to make sure he lived long enough to collect.